Melanesian nightmare. The new Japanese target, Port Moresby, only 300 miles north of Australia, key to a vast strategic area. Daily come the bombers, daily comes destruction. Port Moresby blocks Japan's complete control of New Guinea, of Australia. It must be smashed. It must be taken. The formidable Owen-Stanley mountain range stands between the Japanese base of Buna in northern New Guinea and Port Moresby in the south. Miles of jagged hills and gloomy gorges, steep escarpments and trackless jungle, a frightful natural barrier. But in July 1942, the Japanese began to move over the mountains. In their earlier amphibious attempt to take Port Moresby, they were turned back by the United States Navy at the Battle of the Coral Sea. Now the Japanese are forced into an overland trek of 1,000 man-killing miles to reach their target. Outside Port Moresby, where the Japanese must be met and stopped, is a steaming, tangled nightmare of tropical undergrowth and malarial mountains. This is the part of the world called Melanesia, the Black Islands. For the Allied soldiers, sailors and airmen who must throw back the Japanese, the Melanesian nightmare begins. Papuan guides thread the troops through the jungle labyrinth. Australian infantry has stopped the Japanese a scant 30 miles from Port Moresby. Now it is the Allies who must advance through tortuous New Guinea, against a foe fiercely resisting. Months of bitter, brutal combat. But the Allies push inexorably forward into the strategic Dobodura Plain with its vital airstrip, only 6 miles from New Guinea's north coast. The Japanese retreat becomes a rout. Enemy garrisons give up Buna, Gona, Sanananda, North Coast bases that will serve as stepping stones for future Allied advance. For both sides, the campaign has been a horror of death, wounds, disease. In March 1943, American air reconnaissance discovers a major Japanese move to strengthen their hold on the rest of New Guinea. A troop convoy of 16 ships sets out from Rabaul and heads into the Bismarck Sea. Dispatches come indicating 8 enemy troop transports and 8 destroyers on the way. Allied airmen make ready to nullify the Japanese threat with every available plane, bomb, bullet. The 3-day battle of the Bismarck Sea is a major victory of planes over ships. All 8 enemy transports are sunk. More than 3,000 Japanese soldiers perish. Only 4 destroyers escape. Miles from the Bismarck Sea. Throughout the United States, shipyards are building a new amphibious navy and strange new ships called LSTs, landing ship tanks. These will change the pattern of war. The Second World War has evolved into the first great amphibious conflict in history, and landing craft take priority over destroyers, carriers, and everything else. Down the rivers of the United States, into the oceans of the world, plod the LSTs. Landing ship tanks, but she will be used for everything else as well. And loading her for combat becomes a job for experts. The 2,100 tons of materiel she carries must be stowed aboard in precise sequence and proper order, so that what is needed worst can be put ashore quickest when she joins battle on some remote beachhead. Throughout Australia, throughout the Southwest Pacific, the Allies shift from dogged defense to spirited assault. Beginning in the summer of 1943, the men, the ships, the materiel flow in a massive surge west and north toward Mindanao and the distant Philippines. General MacArthur's strategy has long called for an advance along the New Guinea-Mindanao axis. This advance will be borne largely by small amphibious craft, a navy without glamour. These men know only hard work, hard living, hard fighting, and hard-won victories. Now the LSTs, the floating garages, come into their own. Loading techniques blueprinted in advance become actuality. Pile it in, stuff them full, and every item finds its designated place. Supreme Commander, Southwest Pacific Area, accompanies the assault troops with Rear Admiral Barbie, commander of the 7th Amphibious Force. I shall return, MacArthur has said, referring to the Philippines, but fulfillment has seemed remote. Now the return begins. From Sydney, from Brisbane, into the Coral Sea, into the Bismarck Sea, along the northern New Guinea coast, move the Allied armies and navies. These are combined operations, carried out by the forces of several nations working in closely welded units. Ships of the Royal Australian Navy do yeoman service with the convoys, fight with all they have in battle. Nassau Bay, Salamaua, Lae, Finchhalfen, Saidor. These are footholds along the New Guinea coast, needed for Allied progress westward. The approach is covered, stealthy, cloaked in darkness. And night in the convoy is tense, silent, strained. Dawn will bring the test of combat, the ordeal of fire. Everywhere the Japanese resist with fortitude, fury, determination. Cut off from their bases, with retreat impossible, they fight the losing battle for New Guinea. Rugged, more useful than even their designers dreamed, the LSTs nose into the shore and disgorge their torrent of supplies. The wealth and ingenuity that has made America great in peace combine to make her victorious in war. one of his rare promises to his emperor, Dictator Tojo has promised to stop the enemy's westward movement. The Imperial Japanese command, having lost the initiative, falls back on the tenacity of the foot soldier. All the strength that can be spared from other theaters is mustered to hold Western New Guinea for the Empire. Power mounts more swiftly than the Japanese can retard it. Operations that would have seemed sheer fantasy a year earlier become routine reality. The inland village of Nadza, which commands an escape route for the Japanese and boasts a usable airstrip, is the target. 300 planes from fields at Fort Moresby and Dobadura will lift 1,700 paratroopers, the Pacific's most spectacular airborne assault. Whether the invading troops find their footholds on New Guinea from the air or from the sea, the jungle is equally cruel, the enemy just as malevolent. But the Allied infantry learns what the Marines have proved on Guadalcanal. Skill, courage, and superior equipment defeat the Japanese. New Guinea natives are primitive and warlike. Headhunting and sorcery are part of their lives. But an enlightened colonial administration has won their loyalty. As pathfinders and guides, they lead Allied patrols through secret trails, bring up mail and supplies, and help maintain isolated outposts deep in the jungle. But it is sea power that makes possible the longest strides along the axis leading from New Guinea to Mindanao. With increasing mastery of the amphibious technique, landing follows landing on a smooth, uninterrupted schedule. Over a period of 18 months, the Allies average a new landing every 35 days. And each new foothold is converted into a staging area for the next leap along the New Guinea coast. sluggish, 12-knot pace wins a new designation from the crews of the LSTs. Large, slow targets. But they get there. They deliver their goods, their punch. Admiral Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, and General MacArthur work out the grand design for the westward advance. Nimitz supports MacArthur, making possible huge leapfrog jumps along New Guinea's coast. With Itape and Hollandia, the Allies will be 400 miles nearer to the goal, nearer to the Philippines. Carriers support the Hollandia operation, which is beyond the reach of land-based planes. The enemy is taken by surprise. The fine anchorage of Humboldt Bay and 3 airstrips are wrested from the Japanese. To cloak ever more landing troops. And the advance goes relentlessly on, north and west, Alaway, Wakta and Biak, Numfor and Sansapor. Sansapor is on the uttermost western tip of New Guinea, and with it the entire coast is in Allied hands. But the advance does not stop. In September 1944, the Allies swarm ashore on the island of Morotai, on the threshold of the Philippines. More than 135,000 enemy troops have been bypassed, cut off without hope of rescue. In a little over 12 months, Allied forces in the Southwest Pacific stormed 1,300 miles closer to the heart of the Japanese Empire. Death, these brave men know thy sting. God grant they know their victory. In Tokyo, throughout Japan, a weird, an unreal atmosphere of victory and invincibility still prevails. A feverish, fraudulent security shrouds the islands. Reports from all the battlefronts tell of nothing but Japanese triumph, Allied disaster. But beneath the cheering, oozes out the hideous truth. Back from the battlefronts come the white boxes with the ashes of the dead, the fallen. Welcome home, young man. You were ours, and they took you away. You are no more. Suns may set and rise, but you must sleep on during one never-ending night. And now, Roman Renaissance. Hitler heads south to harden his pact of softening steel. From the Brenner Pass, which links Germany and Italy through the Alps, his official train races to Rome for a high meeting of state. The Führer controls all Europe. But after 4 years of war, his Axis partner, Italy, has sunk to the status of a satellite. Italy's dictator, Mussolini, and Italy's king, Victor Emmanuel III, greet their German overlord. All Rome is on dress parade. But behind the props of the black-shirted fascists, it is the brown-shirted Nazis who call the tune. Grandeur that was Rome, debased, mocked, to make an Axis holiday. After 2 decades of dictatorship, Mussolini's regime still retains its outward flamboyance and flashes a gaudy front to the world. But the foundations of fascism are crumbling. Its days are numbered. This is the twilight of an era. Across the blue waters of the Mediterranean, on the hot sands of newly won North Africa, Allied commanders dream, plan, perfect the design which will bring the Axis to its knees and bring Allied soldiers to the continent of Europe. Sicily is the stepping stone. General Montgomery will command the British troops, General Patton the Americans. The greatest convoy yet organized, almost 3,000 ships and landing craft, from ports stretched all the way east to Suez, all the way west to Gibraltar, will deliver the punch on which hangs the fate of the Italian Empire. In July 1943, the convoy puts to sea under the scrutiny of His Majesty, King George VI. 160,000 Allied soldiers move toward Sicily. No enemy action challenges the passage of the ships, but another and more awful hazard intervenes. In the path of the smooth sailing convoy, a storm is making up. Unseasonable, unpredictable, threatening weather. It is too late to turn back. Land-loving troops sail into the tempest. The convoy and its men weather the storm. Sicily, ancient fortress, forgotten kingdom, rugged island separated by a mere 2 to 12 mile strip of water from the Italian mainland. But it takes 6 weeks of vigorous fighting before Sicily falls, and the last prisoners from the broken ranks of the Axis call it quits. Wind, wave, weather ignore man's war. Again, nature lashes the Allied sailors, this time carrying Axis prisoners back to North Africa. Allied ships may founder, but of greater significance, fascism itself has foundered. From Genoa, from Spezia, the Italian fleet sails to its demise, sails to the island of Malta, to surrender. The long, cruel naval battle for the Mediterranean is over. Tiny Malta, which has endured the worst of Axis lashings, ironically becomes the scene of Axis dissolution. It is September 1943. Italy signs an armistice. Mussolini has fallen. His successor, Field Marshal Badoglio, brings Italy over to the Allied side. But if the Axis is broken, the dominant half remains intact. The Germans turn Italy into an occupied country. Mussolini and his fascists are now the slaves of Hitler and his Nazis. From France and from the Balkans, the Germans send fresh troops into their new province of Italy. Their high command has calculated correctly. The next Allied blow will fall in the Gulf of Salerno, 185 miles northeast of Sicily, on the Italian coast. The attack comes, and the Germans are waiting. September 9th, 1943, exactly 4 years after the beginning of World War II. The United States Fifth Army and the British 10th Corps hit the Italian mainland, knocked the first hole into the fortress of Europe. Salerno is only 40 miles south of Naples, the greatest port in southern Europe. That is what the Allies are after. But first they must slug it out with the Germans. The Gulf of Salerno becomes the Gulf of Despair. Give close, continuous support to the soldiers. The invasion becomes a duel of cannon. Guns afloat against guns ashore. The German Luftwaffe throws everything it has against the invaders, hoping to smash the landings and pin down the Allies south of Naples. The beachhead, the Italian campaign, hovers in the balance. German propaganda blankets the world with the news that the invaders are being thrown into the sea. But the flow of Allied men and supplies continues in the face of a new, fearsome weapon used by the Germans for the first time, the remote-controlled glider bomb. Is added the protecting cloak of destroyers' smoke screens. Survival on the beachhead rests on survival of the ships that support it. Sicily and at Salerno, the landing ship's tanks, the LSTs, are formally christened in action, in fire. They are destined to become an integral part of all future amphibious operations. The Germans launched their crucial counterattack, delivered with all the skill and fury that have made Hitler's legions the terror of Europe. The Allies are almost split in two, almost driven off the beaches. Almost. October the 1st, 1943, Naples. The Germans have failed. The Germans fall back to the north. The Allies have their port, a city reeling from air raids, ravaged by typhus, ricketed from hunger. But for the Neapolitans, defeat means peace. For the troops, Naples is only a way station on the weary march to Rome. Vedi Napoli e poi muori. See Naples and die. It is an old saying, but war has given it a new and bitter meaning. Thousands have died for the harbor of Naples, and the Germans have systematically, ruthlessly, thoroughly ruined it, sinking every ship, blocking every channel. But such as it is, the Allies have it. One of the greatest salvage feats in the annals of war is performed by Allied engineers in the Bay of Naples. Within a fortnight, the harbor is operating. Within a month, 50 hulks are raised and the port is clear. Clear to receive the avalanche of supplies needed to sustain and broaden the Italian campaign. Naples is the reward for the ordeal of Salerno. Pile up. But inland, at Cassino, the Germans stand entrenched, immovable, and the campaign becomes a bloody, futile stalemate. Checked on land, the Allies counter with a sweeping flank attack by sea. From Naples and Salerno, a convoy sails 120 miles up the coast to Anzio, only 30 miles south of Rome itself. The Americans call it an end run. The British call it a cat claw. 50,000 troops are put ashore behind the flabbergasted Germans. January 22nd, 1944. The initial landings are unopposed, but Allied success is checked by Allied error. Instead of swift exploitation and immediate breakout, the invaders dig in, giving the Germans time to rally their defenses, time to isolate, imprison the beachhead in a perimeter of steel. The hell of Salerno pales before Anzio's inferno. From captured bases at Foggia, Allied airmen fly to the rescue of their frantic comrades at sea and on land. Sailors and soldiers whose blood holds Anzio. And from the Balkans, the Germans bring in more planes to slaughter the precarious invaders. Anzio, intended as a swift, decisive stroke to open the road to Rome. Anzio, in reality, 123 days of incessant carnage. A long-drawn nightmare. It was January when the Allies landed at Anzio. It is May when the Germans collapse. 3 crack Nazi divisions have been destroyed. 30,000 young men are lost to Hitler. In from the coast and up from the south, the Allied armies stream together, forming a swelling, flowing tide whose billows are lashed by victory. The march begins. The march to Rome. Destruction is the benediction of fascism, of dictatorship. In Italy, Hitler has been compelled to squander and disperse his forces, weakening his Russian front, sapping the strength needed to oppose impending Allied landings in France. The price paid by the Allies on the Italian front today will be refunded in France and Russia tomorrow. And Mussolini? He and his age pass into history. Northward flee the Germans, northward to turn and fight again. But Rome is free, free again. The city of all time and of all the world. And all the world, it seems, comes marching into Rome on this 4th day of June in the year 1944. The Americans come and the British come. So do the Canadians and Greeks, the Indians and Irish, the South Africans and French, the Moroccans, the Poles, Brazilians, Dutch, and the Italians too. An army speaking 40 different languages, all with the same meaning. Roman Renaissance. The rebirth of a city, the rebirth of a nation, the rebirth of freedom for the humble, the oppressed. And now, D-Day. On June the 6th, 1944, an Allied expeditionary force will invade the continent of Europe. That day must come. At Casablanca, In January of 1943, the Allies commit themselves to the liberation of Europe, while their soldiers, sailors, and airmen storm the gates of Tripoli. North Africa is yet to be won, but the combined chiefs of staff speak their distant dream to cross the Channel, return to the continent. The chiefs of state christen this supreme operation with a noble code name, Overlord. In London, a year later, the Supreme Commander, Allied Expeditionary Forces, General Eisenhower, takes up the task of piercing the heart of Germany and destroying her armed forces. But across the narrow English Channel lies the ultimate barrier, Hitler's Atlantic Wall, formidable guardian of Festung Europa, the fortress of Europe. Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox, one-time hero of the Africa Corps, commands the coastal defense. He multiplies the fortifications and sows death on the beaches for those who dare transgress. But there is no roof on the fortress of Europe, and assault from the sky begins long months before the day called D. This is the key that unlocks the gate. Paralyze Germany's war machine. Pound the Luftwaffe into impotence. And the troops, the men who must finish what the bombers have begun. Each month, the United States pours 150,000 of her young men onto the British Isles. All England becomes an armed camp, one vast depot of armament and supplies. At the appointed hour, a torrent of materiel and men will be set in motion. Southward to the Channel, southward to the embarkation ports, southward to destiny. It is spring, 1944. The date has been set. The hour has been chosen. Men committed to the assault are sealed in ships for secrecy. Ports, camps, and assembly points are cut off from the outside world. There is nothing to do but wait on tide and weather. Wait and get ready and keep ready and wait and wait. Gentlemen, the King. From Falmouth, from Portland, from Plymouth, from Weymouth, the ships depart. From different ports, the ships sail at varying intervals to arrive at the 5 landing beaches together. 5 beaches stretched 60 miles over the coast of France. First to invade will be the paratroops. Their mission is to support the landings. Intelligence officers have warned the Supreme Commander that the airborne assault is too hazardous to succeed. But without it, the landings may fail. Eisenhower faces a crucial decision. Should he risk the slaughter of 2 superb divisions, or should he cancel the drop and imperil the whole invasion? He orders the paratroopers to France. The gliders go in. France is below. There are crack-ups and casualties, but the paratroopers accomplish their mission. Tactical air squadrons fly 5,000 sorties to support the amphibious assault. Ships will converge on France with the precision of a dress parade. The Luftwaffe has been broken. The U-boats driven from the channel. The vanguard of 35 divisions moves unmolested toward the beaches. Warships prepare to open the assault with a barrage of gunfire. Battleship Nevada is there, torpedoed at Pearl Harbor, a flagship at Normandy. Naval guns open the Western Front. Inside Hitler's Atlantic Wall, the Nazis know what the world does not. The assault is on. Defeated in the north, defeated in the south, defeated in the east, the Germans have but one hope left. Destroy the invaders from the west. Tons of concrete float across the channel. Artificial docks called mulberries to hide their top-secret purpose. Huge, hollow blocks of cement that will be sunk offshore, forming piers. Few things are predictable in war. Sometimes casualties are lightest, where heaviest losses are expected. And often the worst fighting takes place, where none is anticipated. but whichever way the battle turns, each man must face his ordeal alone. 54 merchant ships are deliberately sunk to build a breakwater that shelters the shore under its lee. Together with the mulberry units, they form a man-made harbor. Tons of supplies pour in with the invading troops, not afterwards when it might be too late. Human ingenuity rises to the challenge of invasion. But one factor, one all-important factor, remains beyond human control. What the might of the German army, navy, and air force is unable to do, the worst channel storm in 80 years almost does. But the invaders hold the beaches. And in the ports of England, wave after wave is mounted to build and broaden the landings. The Allied Expeditionary Naval Forces execute their mission to assure the safe and timely arrival of troops, weapons, supplies. A mission which will have a profound effect on the history of man.
This program will be interrupted from time to time to bring you the latest news bulletins as they are received in the newsroom. Keep tuned to your favorite NBC station to keep in step with all the latest developments on this Invasion Day. And now the orchestra opens the program with the revival of an old hit, Blue Room. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this program to bring you a special broadcast.
This is George Hicks speaking. I'm now speaking from the tower above the signal bridge of an American naval flagship. And we're lying some few miles off the coast of France, where the invasion of Europe has begun. It is now 20 minutes to 6.
Behind the landings, Allied planes release a barrier of bombs that cut off German reinforcements, paralyze German countermoves. Every road, every bridge, Every rail line, every canal, all the way back into Germany, is smashed, isolating the French beaches. Every 75 yards, a landing craft heads for the shore and touches down. Resistance is furious from German suicide squads, but the Americans go in and hang on by their guts. Of Dunkirk returned to France, this time to stay. The British soldiers who beat Rommel on the sands of Africa helped destroy him on the sands of Europe. The architects of invasion view their work. Eisenhower and Admiral Ramsey, commander of Allied naval forces. Commander of American naval forces, Admiral Stark. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley, commander of the 1st United States Army. Field Marshal Montgomery of El Alamein, commander of Allied ground forces. After invasion, the breakout, the swelling Allied armies stream inland into Europe. Behind the survivors lie those who died to enslave the world, and those who died to free it. And now, killers and the killed. The U-boat will decide the outcome of the war. This is what Hitler is telling the Germans as his underwater sailors harvest victory after victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. The realities support him in mid-1943. The massacre by German submarines is costing the American republics and the British Empire millions of dollars. Thousands of Allied sailors are dead. And for this, Hitler honors his naval high command. Yes, and more medals. Glory to the Fuhrer. Glory to the Third Reich. Glory to the victors. Hitler presses his propaganda machine to the ultimate, squeezing each drop of triumph out of each victory. Every German is told his submarines threaten the entire Allied war effort with collapse. Germany rejoices in the news that if the United States and Great Britain continue losing at sea, they will be defeated everywhere. Hitler, whose pride has been his army, is now convinced that submarines deserve top priority in his war economy. Newer and deadlier U-boats are put into mass production. Factories throughout Germany and occupied Europe fabricate parts that are rushed to shipyards for final assembly. But as the Nazis turn out newer and more murderous models, the doom of the submarine is being sealed by the Allies. To counteract enemy submarines, a ring of strategic air bases has been forged. One by one, key areas are developed from which planes can cover most of the Atlantic with an umbrella of aircraft. Step by step, the sea becomes as deadly for the Germans as they have made it for the Allies. Arc by arc, in 600-mile sweeps, planes encompass the North Atlantic. Sector by sector, aircraft, one of the most potent of anti-submarine weapons, spreads its protection over ocean routes and coastal lanes. Base by base, planes reach out, curtailing the range and speed of the U-boats by keeping them submerged. Area by area, protection grows as the mere presence of aircraft overhead discourages attacks on convoys, breaking the morale of U-boat crews. still, a center ocean gap, the Black Pit, left uncovered by land-based planes. U-boat paradise. Allied bombs are not only over the Atlantic, but from English bases they're being flown over Germany where they are dumped by the millions, despite Goering's promise to the contrary. Bombs on factories where U-boat parts are made. Bombs on railways that bring the parts together. Bombs on pens where the submarines hide. U-boats are being destroyed before they can stalk the sea. And in the United States, shipyards work around the clock to supply part of the answer to the challenge of the mid-ocean Black Pit, where U-boats still roam unmolested. Critical materials and supplies are diverted to the construction of a new class of ship in the United States Navy, officially designated the CVE. Their crews will call them jeep carriers or baby flat tops. But jeep carriers alone are not enough. The Navy begins training pilot candidates with special aptitudes and building the planes for those who pass the rigid tests. All three elements of the plan: building the ships, training the men, turning out the planes, progress simultaneously in an all-out effort aimed at killing enemy submarines. Great Lakes steamers have been converted into seagoing schools, where pilots learn to negotiate tiny, unstable flight decks. flat tops. Small but tough. A new dimension in convoy protection has been added. Carrying their aerial umbrella with them, cargo and troop ships can safely sail across the fatal mid-ocean gap, soon to be U-boat hell. No enemy submarine can surface anywhere in the Atlantic, from the Arctic to the Antarctic, without fear of destruction. The Allies force the sea lanes open for the liberation of Europe, for ultimate victory. Being run down on 100 ocean fronts, another campaign is being waged against them ashore. The 10th Fleet, which has no ships and will never put to sea, is the directing mind of anti-submarine warfare. Its function is to coordinate all intelligence, ships, and devices used against enemy submarines, and devise the best possible protection for Allied shipping. It replaces haphazard methods with a unified assault against the U-boats. Ships designed to kill U-boats. The destroyer escorts are the final, basic component needed to annihilate the Germans operating under the Atlantic. The ships and the gallant sailors who manned them. Many a U-boat's death is plotted in research centers, where extraordinary instruments are invented and perfected to aid in detection, pursuit, and the fight. Instruments that link ship to ship, ship to plane to plane, in unified hunter-killer groups. The Jeep carrier, Guadalcanal, has one of the most exciting tales to tell of the Allied victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. On June the 4th, 1944, 2 days before the Normandy invasion, the Guadalcanal, with escorts, is cruising off the Azores in search of prowling submarines. She already has 4 kills to her credit and is looking for more. but this time with an added flourish. She has her heart set not on sinking another submarine, but on capturing one. All hands in the task group are looking for trouble. Then it comes. Submarine contact. Out goes the word. We are starting attack. Inside the unsuspecting submarine, everything is relaxed and routine. It is Sunday and the Germans are taking it easy. But there is a surprise in store for them. Planes from the Guadalcanal spot the German and report to the ships below their target is changing course. One of the planes swoops down to mark the U-boat's location with machine gun fire. Deeper, deeper, deeper goes the sub. Cut the engines. Silence. But there is no escape. A fatal wound. The sub must die below, or fight it out on the surface. She's coming up. Small caliber guns take the submarine under fire to keep her crew from using their deck gun and force them to abandon their boat. and order rings out. Away all boarding parties. Not since the War of 1812 has a ship of the United States Navy captured an enemy man of war on the high seas. German sailors are taken prisoner, including the captain of U-505. Only one has been killed. The Guadalcanal brings her prize, defeated and helpless, alongside for towing back to Bermuda. And with the U-505, vanishes the German dream for conquest of the Atlantic. Before Germany's unconditional surrender, 866 Axis submarines lie dead on the ocean floor. Victory in the Battle of the Atlantic is the result of teamwork between the Allies and integration of all weapons. The Germans surrender. The Battle of the Atlantic is won. The desperate, vicious struggle is over. To Allied airmen and sailors who have restored freedom to the seas, all honor for making victory possible in World War II.